Silicon Valley to San Francisco. It's a tale of two cities that share a common economic generator, big tech. From Apple, Salesforce, Nvidia, and Cisco, just to name a distinct few, transportation between these two hubs of innovation is crucial to the economy of not just the Bay Area, but the country. Sure, from San Jose, you could take BART's right-of-way that routes itself via the East Bay and through the subterranean Transbay Tube to Fog City, or you could take the more direct commuter route that dates back to the 1860s, Caltrain. Sticking with the SF Bay Area here, I should probably mention that there's a total of 5 local transit systems: BART, SMART, Muni Metro, VTA Light Rail, which I already did a video on, and of course, Caltrain, the subject of today's episode. Caltrain exclusively serves a corridor between the cities of San Francisco and San Jose, with weekday service occasionally extending itself to the city of Gilroy, which is south of San Jose. Caltrain operates on standard gauge track with a distance of 48.9 miles on weekdays and weekends to the Tamian Station, and 77.2 miles of weekday-only service to Gilroy. In total, there are 31 stations with 3 what I'll call specialty stations. Similarly to my last video, I'll be writing in every single one of Caltrain's stops, and because my channel focuses on transit-oriented development, I'll assess every single one of them for how the community around the station embraces their existence. First, let's travel all the way back to 1863. At this time, there was a railroad link called the Peninsula Commute between San Francisco and San Jose that was completed to transport goods in post-Mexico, Alta California. Southern Pacific, also known as Union Pacific now, acquired the railroad in 1870, and in 1910, multiple cutoffs and tunnels were constructed near San Francisco so that the right-of-way could more directly lead into downtown SF. The Bayshore Cutoff, as it's known now, is still presently used, and it's pretty cool that this important piece of rail infrastructure was built over 110 years ago. Now, the rail industry was exiting its heyday after a pretty successful 1940s, and there was stiff and fierce competition from the expansion of 101 ending in the 1960s and construction of the Interstate 280 in the 1970s that seduced Bay Area commuters away from rail transit and into driving on these smooth, pretty, new freeways. Thanks, Eisenhower. Even during this lull period of peninsula commutes, the headways weren't even that bad. There was a maximum headway of 10 minutes at peak times, which was a miracle considering the minimum wait times now on Caltrain are 20 to 30 minutes at peak times, but Caltrain mostly runs about once an hour. In 1980, though, Southern Pacific saw the writing on the wall and they decided to shut down the service and end their relationship with the peninsula commute. Then, like divine intervention, the god of transit for California in 1985 reached down from the heavens with its pious hand and lent it to the struggling commuters that now had no way to get from SF to the Silicon Valley. Caltrans blessed commuters with new rolling stock and station upgrades for the struggling service and renamed the service Caltrain, giving us the service we know and love today. So a little bit of a change here, but I'm spinning the section off into its own thing, because I think it's super important to tell you what I and thousands of other people board when they step on Caltrain. To address the elephant in the room, yes, I know that Caltrain is going to operate with new Stadler EMUs starting sometime next year, but I think it's fair to give these elderly diesel units their flowers while they're still commissioned. First, we'll talk about the locomotives that Caltrain currently uses. So we got the EMP F40PHs. These were made by GE, and these locomotives are ancient. The first of these diesel-electric locos were built starting in 1975, and the last of them were built ending in 1998. While yes, they're old, there's a reason why they're still chugging after nearly 50 years of service. For the Baby Bullet Express service, and sometimes for regular express routes, Caltrain uses the MP Express MP36PH-3Cs. These locomotives began service in 2003, and many other railroads like New Mexico's Rail Runner, Orlando Sunrail, and Chicago's Metra use these as well. As for the passenger cars, there are 2 sets of passenger cars that the current diesel locomotives push and pull. First, we have the Nippon Sharyo Gallery cars. These are okay for the most part. They've been in service since the inauguration of Caltrain in 1985, and while the first level is pretty decent, the second level requires passengers to climb up these funky spiral stairs and stumble through a pretty narrow corridor to get to the second floor seats. Also, there aren't that many plugs in these models, with maybe 2 to 4 outlets per car. Next up, we have the Bombardier bi-level cars. These are much newer and were bought around the same time as MPIs, and they're quite comfortable. The Toronto area GO Rail and the SoCal area Metrolink riders are quite familiar with these cars. There are 2 levels and there's a higher seating capacity, and plugs are much more common on tables. I assume that these will be used for the Tamian-Gilroy corridor as the primary cars for the diesel-only route when the EMUs go into service, and that's nice to know that these cars won't go to waste because they're really nice and they're quite luxurious, honestly. I'll talk about the new Stadler EMUs in the electrification section, so no worries. Thankfully, Caltrain is on one corridor, and so there aren't really going to be divisions into spurs like in my last video. I'll start from the south terminus at the Gilroy station, and I'll work my way up slowly to the north terminus in San Francisco at its 4th and King station. Here at Gilroy, the station building was built way back in 1917 as part of the old Pajaro Valley Railroad, but what is now modern Caltrain didn't extend itself here until 1992. This station isn't as bad as I expected. There's some markets and local businesses across the street. There are a little bit of single-family houses behind businesses. It's not necessarily mixed use or dense, but there's a huge dirt lot adjacent to the station that could be something. Meetings for TOD were held in 2021, but no progress so far has been made regarding this empty lot. San Martin Station opened up in 1992 along with the Gilroy extension. At least San Martin has houses close to the station since the town is pretty old, and in its downtown, there's not a lot of businesses here. I think the station exists for commuters who live here. Here at Morgan Hill, the original station was built way back in 1899 and was rebuilt with the 1992 extension. It's honestly very nice. There's a cute railroad park by the station. It's within walking distance to the Brighton Oaks and Sun Street multi-story developments. You know, pretty walkable. It's a destination in itself, mostly. You'll see why I love Caltrain so much. It stops in the middle of legacy, old, walkable, pre-car downtowns, unlike a lot of newer systems built in the car-centric 1950s and onward. Not to be confused with the light rail station on VTA, we have the Blossom Hill station, which opened up also in 1992. There are some apartments here. We have the Oak Grove family apartments and the Lex apartments here. They're not really diverse in terms of land use, but I'd say they're pretty dense. Also, not to be confused with the light rail station, we have the Capitol station. The Communication Hill neighborhood is right by the station on what used to be, surprise, a communications tower hill. There's no current pedestrian access to the station from that development, but there are major plans put in place to build overhead pedestrian and bike bridges to the station via the existing and new Communications Hill residential district. We should see an immediate change in ridership with these improvements. Usually when you build pedestrian walkways, there is a major incentive for people living near the station to use it. Now, I already talked about Tamian Station. This station, however, is the southernmost point at which the electrification of Caltrain would be present, and this is the start of regular service, operating on weekends as well as weekdays. As previously mentioned, the first of the 3 VTA light rail connections Caltrain has is at Tamian, and it connects to the Blue Line. TOD is being constructed here, and it's going to be done in 2025. Check out my light rail video for more info on that. It's really cool and it's awesome. Additionally, I have also talked about San Jose Diridon Station, which opened up in 1935 as a replacement station for a more northern depot back then. And I already mentioned that yes, this is the big daddy, and yes, a California station with 9 platforms is huge. You will never see anything like this in the state besides maybe Los Angeles and its Union Station, and maybe Sacramento and its big station as well. It connects here with the Green Line of the VTA Light Rail, Amtrak's Coast Starlight Capital Corridor lines, and ACE's Light going to Stockton. This will add another service, BART, when it tunnels under here, opening up hopefully in 2029. And the tunnel will be single bore. We'll get a couple more stations in San Jose. I'll talk about that later in a future BART episode, and it'll finally provide a ring of service around the Bay Area. All Caltrain services stop here, and this is the southernmost station of the semi-high-speed rail line called the Baby Bullet. Though really, it's kind of just a glorified express service. So here at College Park, I actually used to take off from the station all the time when I was in high school. Being that my high school was right next door, it was kind of a given that a lot of kids at the school would get off and on here. It's a weekday-only station served by 4 trains a day, which aligns with the school schedule. And I knew a lot of my friends and dudes that took Caltrain to and from school. There's not much TOD around here, but for its little size in a residential neighborhood and its large relative use of high school kids, I'd say it's good enough. Next major station here is Santa Clara. It opened up in 1863. This is a cool little intermodal station. It serves ACE and Amtrak as well, and BART when that opens up around 2030 or so. Again, alluding to the Silicon Valley extension into downtown San Jose. This area used to be much more industrial, even with its closeness to SCU, which is Santa Clara University, but the huge Benton development that opened up last year across the street is a big help, and it absolutely dominates the urban fabric of this area. Again, it helps that many people who board and depart from the station are Santa Clara University students who either commute or just want to travel from their college campus. Here at Santa Clara, there's nothing but good things in the future. There's a proposal from a developer to build 8 stories and 170 units on where this 2.4-acre parking lot is now, which is great. The development also wishes to put in student-based and affordable housing, which is sweet. Lawrence Station was built in 1864, and this station serves more the local lines that stop at every station, but it's still valuable. There's also a Costco across the platform too. That's kind of sweet. As part of the past Lawrence Station plan, there are many developments built and under construction, from Balmoral, Shaya, Monticello, and the under construction complex on Astor Avenue that should majorly increase ridership on Caltrain, which is 189 units. The Sunnyvale station was rebuilt in 2003, and if you watched my intro video, you've actually seen this station before. It's like Mountain View's cute little brother. It's not as grandiose or bougie, but it's pretty sweet and it's a cool spot to hang out. There's a whole lot of construction here. The loft house apartments with tenants like Phil's Coffee. Sunnyvale kind of gives weird vibes though. Murphy Avenue is the central commercial district and it's pretty urban and concentrated, but leave that area and it's a bunch of newer, larger apartments. To me, it kind of seems a little ingenuine, right? Everything good I needed to say about Mountain View I said in my last video, right? There's a VTA light rail transfer, which isn't cross-platform, my mistake, but it's pretty close nonetheless. There's good food, vibes, and the urban fabric's great. Enough said. San Antonio Station was built in 1999, and it's not to be confused with the wonderful and illustrious rail hub of San Antonio, Texas. This station isn't as good as Mountain View, but it still packs a solid punch. You have the Acera, Lansby, and the new Lansby North apartments. Though it's not a destination in itself, as there's not much else besides apartments. There are no businesses or attractions here. Also, like Sunnyvale and Lawrence, it's underneath a Strode overpass. I really don't like this trend, honestly, but I guess you can't do anything about it now, but this interchange does not need to be this highway-y. California Avenue was built in 1982, and it's the first station in the city of Palo Alto. The park across from the station, Jerry Bowden Park, has a weird-ass car sculpture by the station called Naked Running Car Statue. Yes, I'm not making that up. California Avenue is like Sunnyvale's Murphy Street, but bigger, in that it has a quite confusing urban fabric. It's a mishmash of attempted urbanism with small apartments, but the area also has brand new parking garages and parking lot riddled office buildings from the 60s. It's an intriguing small town urban core surrounded by parking lots. Hey, should we as Palo Altans build apartments by this popular Caltrain station that is 2 blocks away? Or build a stupid parking garage that looks artsy? They opted for the latter. Some apartments by the station are the Page Mill and the Palomino apartments, so I guess that's a positive. I'm not counting the Stanford station because it only stops on Stanford football game days every Saturday. Palo Alto Station was built in 1890, and it's the next very important station here on Caltrain. All trains and all lines stop at Palo Alto. This town, and by default the station, was built because of Stanford. There's not a ton of surface parking here, which is cool, but there's a deal of garages, honestly, in downtown. Look, I can't lie. Downtown Pali is amazing, and it would be my favorite in the peninsula if it wasn't so damn expensive. I mean, this is like peak Silicon Valley. Even if you own a car, you'll need to take the train here though, because you really don't want to be paying for gas and parking after the absolute beating that your bank account just took here. Menlo Park Station was built in 1867, and outside of the marvelous station building, you have a small but pretty dense downtown for Menlo Park. These Springline residences replace the giant parking lot. It has great and diverse land usage, and it's within easy walking distance of the station. On the other side of the station, you have a lot of medium density apartments like on Alma Lane, and there's the good urban core on Santa Cruz Avenue. Really, it's nice overall. Now, a moment of silence for the Atherton Caltrain station. Another victim of NIMBYism. So sad. The Redwood City station was built in 1902, and it's another core station. All trains stop here. Redwood City, although it's been an important city right in between San Jose and San Francisco, did not used to have all these nice developments. Just some notable ones here. You have the box offices, 201 Marshall, 601 Marshall, the Cardinal, Franklin 299, and so much more here. What's great about Redwood City is that yes, there are a lot of new developments, but they don't stand out awkwardly like in Sunnyvale, and they actually fit in with the urban fabric. They blend in, and there's a square-shaped downtown with the County History Museum in the center. It kind of reminds me of the small town in Back to the Future, actually. Redwood City is very, very walkable, and there are so many restaurants and things to do here. I might retract my Mountain View statement and say that this is the best downtown in the peninsula, no question. Even more, the city isn't stopping with projects, and the most notable and most impactful will be the redevelopment of the Sequoia Station Strip Mall right next to the station into a 631-unit, 1-acre district with 40% affordable housing. I think this might be the biggest project I've talked about to date. The San Carlos station was built in 1888, and it's grade separation time. Let's go! It's the first time we see legitimate above-grade separation in Caltrain from the south. It's not as grand of a station as Redwood City. It does its job as a quaint peninsula town. The Trestle and the Depot office developments are close by. San Carlos Avenue, the downtown district, is a hub for shops and restaurants, and I think the huge hills actually do San Carlos a favor, and they force the city to be dense. There's a lot of apartments scattered nearby that are medium density. Now, Belmont Station, built in 1997. It's pretty small, it's also grade separated. There are a couple of projects like 815 Old County Road and the Link Housing. Belmont also lacks a true downtown area, unfortunately. The Ralston Central Corridor is surrounded by parking lots, and pedestrians are not really prioritized by the Caltrain station. To get to the station here, you must cross the massive El Camino Real, and at least when you do this in San Carlos, you're greeted by a quaint downtown. The new Hillsdale station was built in 2021, and this is the newest station on Caltrain's system, which is now above grade and replaced an at-grade one. It's the center of the massive Bay Meadows development complex on the site of an old racetrack. On its right, you have respectable office buildings and apartments, many of which are under construction, but now you have the Morgan and the Fieldhouse developments. Nicely, you have the Hillsdale Mall to its southwest, which was also remodeled and has a new outdoor western portion, served by bougie spots like Pinstripes in Cinepolis. Pedestrian bridge, anyone? Normally, this local-only station at Hayward Park would be lame and boring, but San Mateo took advantage of the high land value around train stations and facilitated the building of the Station Park Green apartments, which are pretty nice. I like the cool water-looking playground, though the park and ride lot is nefariously big for this smaller station. The downtown San Mateo station was built in 2000, and it's the biggest city by population in the peninsula. The home of Tom Brady and Barry Bonds has a massive downtown. There are countless developments and tall-ish buildings that make the station very popular. There are endless restaurant and entertainment options. The park and ride lot isn't massive and doesn't take too much valuable space. There are pedestrian-friendly urban blocks. It's less like Redwood City's downtown with shiny new developments, but San Mateo's downtown is by default a TOD because it's an old city predating car use. The Burlingame Station was built in 1894, and a lot like San Carlos, it's a quaint peninsula town with a Main Street corridor bearing its name. There's not a whole lot of mixed-use development. There are some apartments across the street and a restaurant row. It has the Capital VTA station problem of having car dealers right next to the train station, which is weird. There is a promising future in Burlingame, though. There's the Town Square mixed-use development on Lorton Avenue with mixed commercial and retail space, as well as a development on Donnelly Avenue with 14 units and on Lorton with 19 units. Hey, big steps for a small city. The Broadway Station is a weekend-only station built in 1911, and I'm not going to go over it too much detail. The Millbrae Station was built in 1864 but remodeled in 2003 when BART came to town, and this is the only Caltrain to BART connection, and thus it's super busy. It has 3 platforms that serve 2 Caltrain and 3 BART tracks, and what's super cool about this station is that it has an above-ground mezzanine level with fare gates for BART that serves as the pedestrian connection for BART and Caltrain linked riders. This BART connection arrived with a remodeling and extension of BART, like I said, and it's quite big. One irking thing about Caltrain and BART is that the systems operate on different frequencies, with Caltrain being 30 minutes to an hour and BART being every 15 minutes or so. Therefore, not every BART passenger has a Caltrain car waiting for them when they get to the station. And BART, says that they're working with Caltrain to provide better transfers, and I hope that's the case. Only recently did this station start to become more TOD-minded, though. The gateway at the Millbrae, right next to the station with 400 units and 6 stories, actually opened as I was passing. This is just awesome. I think a lot has been done for this transfer station of 2 of the Bay's biggest transit systems. The Adrian Road segment actually has a development being constructed. The San Bruno station was built in 1962 and it was rebuilt in 2013. Don't confuse it with the San Bruno BART station just north of it. It's not an intermodal station. This station's above ground, it looks cool, but the area around the station absolutely sucks. There's no vibrant central commercial district that's walkable. Instead, all the shops are on the El Camino Strode. I tried looking to see if there were any exciting developments, and I couldn't find a damn thing. The South San Francisco station was built in 1909. Again, don't confuse it with the BART station, not intermodal. It's nestled between Highway 101 to its left and an office and industrial park to its right. You have the OK Airport Boulevard developments, but that's only after going underneath 101 and crossing Airport Boulevard. The altitude apartments look nice, and hopefully it's a sign that the office parks to the right will sell their land and create value with mixed-use properties, which I doubt would happen. The Bayshore station was built in 1909 and it straddles the county line between SF and San Mateo County. There's not much now at all, but there are tons of planned developments that are in place. The Slage Lock site, the 20-acre mixed-use development of 12 buildings with 1,680 housing units. That's massive. I mean, just look at the size of all this empty land. Unfortunately though, Bayshore's Caltrain station is not an intermodal station for Muni Metro's T-Line. Even though Caltrain station is only 800 feet away from the Sunnydale station, the real travesty is that there's not even a pedestrian path that linked riders must walk on. I myself had to walk 1,400 feet to get to the nearest Muni Metro station. I think with the, in the future, of course, they'll work to actually provide pathways, directly to the Muni station from Caltrain. It's not necessarily easy for linked riders, in my opinion. The 22nd Street station was built in 1907, and wow, now we are really in San Francisco. I like the area, I think it's cool. I like the Dog Patch area and the Mission Bay areas, but I personally despise the station, and where do I even start? I don't think that the station should be discontinued. I think it's very valuable for the people of the Dog Patch area, but it needs a remodeling ASAP. Like I said, there are wonderful developments in the Dog Patch area surrounding the station, but still, this station is hostile. It's dark at night, and it's one of the few stations that are non-ADA accessible on Caltrain. It's also quite ugly, and it's not as aesthetically pleasing, being right underneath Highway 280. At least an elevator for a platform would be nice. Finally, at our northernmost terminus, we're in downtown San Francisco. Well, sort of. We're not in the financial district or near the centrally placed Market Street, but we can get there using Mini Metro's new T-Line extension tunneling its way to downtown, all the way to Chinatown. I myself can't do the city of SF justice when it comes to describing how powerful their urbanism is, but I'll sure try. The station is nearly as big as San Jose Diridon, with 6 island platforms for Caltrain riders and 2 more platforms for Muni riders wishing to go into downtown SF using the T-Line extension or out southbound to Dogpatch. So the area around the station used to be where Interstate 280 met up with the Embarcadero Freeway, which was a 2-level viaduct from the station site past the wonderful ferry building, and it went all the way up to Broadway. In a similar fashion as Seattle's now demolished Alaskan Way viaduct, the earthquake in 1989 caused city planners to be worried about the structural integrity of the building, and thus they decided to demolish it in 1991, ending the concrete monstrosity's terror over the city's neighborhoods south of downtown. Due to this demolition, though, there are countless mixed-use developments that sprung on the ashes of the former Embarcadero Freeway site. There are limitless attractions outside of the infinite housing and dining options here, such as Oracle Park just a block away, home of the MLB's SF Giants, and there's the planned China-based neighborhood directly south where residents and visitors can stroll along Mission Creek Park and take in the chill SF air. Or maybe you're a Warriors fan. You can take Muni Metro for a few stops, and before you know it, you're right in front of the new Chase Center Arena, home of the 6-time NBA champs. All in all, I'm not asking all Bay Area cities to model SF exactly and precisely. I recognize that every city has individual needs and capacities of development, and not every city's economy has the funds to pull off massive developments like these, but they can at least take notes of the Bay Area's granddad. So electrification of what is now Caltrain is actually not that new of a concept. In 1929, Southern Pacific aimed to electrify its line, but quickly dismissed the project due to competition from highways amongst post-war inflation. The in-progress Caltrain modernization program that's taking place right now will electrify 51 miles of its track between downtown SF and the Tamian station. Electrification is basically the process of installing overhead lines and poles so that electric multiple units or electric locomotives can run on the tracks. Caltrain currently is running on diesel cars, and when the electrification is complete, they'll switch over to new Stadler KISS EMUs. Not only are electric locomotives in multiple units an environmental benefit, but the trains by default will have a greater acceleration. So some highlights here: you have display screens similar to the new BART cars on every single car. There are going to be plug outlets for every seat, nice overhead lighting, also a more quiet and enjoyable ride, plus they look great. As for the old fleet, they won't die just yet. Some diesel trains will be kept working to serve the corridor south of Tamian all the way to Gilroy, since that part won't be electrified. Now let's talk about some overarching problems that the system has, but I'll be honest, there's not a lot of them. Caltrain's frequencies are generally very low outside of big stations like San Jose Diridon, Millbrae, or San Francisco. San Jose Station has trains at a frequency of a range of every 20 to 30 minutes or so during rush hour, and this is pretty promising. As for a Burlingame though, at a non-rush hour time like at around noon, the frequency is about 1 train per hour. So with Caltrain, the frequency really just depends. It's not a one frequency fits all system like VTA's light rail, which runs every 15 minutes. Knowing that the frequency 100 years ago was once every 10 minutes, it's a little disappointing that there can be times where you wait for a train for an hour. Also, like any commuter rail service, there are some irritating times when you're on a local train and you have to stop and wait for an express train to come through if you're not at a station with express tracks. Now onto the highlights. Being only one line and one corridor, the line is very simple to navigate, and it has a key advantage over multi-line systems like BART and VTA, in that it follows a simple one-line corridor and it doesn't have to time transfers within itself, only externally. In addition, this corridor always has the right-of-way, so trains do not have to wait for cars near at-grade crossings. In addition, we can see that Caltrain and the Peninsula Corridor Joint Powers Board are making an active effort to remove at-grade crossings and cross above roads, like at Hillsdale Station for instance. Now, I'll explain to you why an old corridor is great. You see, as I mentioned, the rail corridor dates back to the 1860s, a time way before cars. As a result, all of these towns such as Redwood City, San Mateo, Palo Alto, Burlingame, and of course San Francisco were built along the rail corridor, and their city centers had to be built up around the SF-SJ Railroad so that businesses could get their goods up and down the peninsula with ease. That leaves us in 2023 with a line of cities following a linear rail corridor, which is ideal for a commuter rail service. Let's just say it was a no-brainer to update and electrify Caltrain. Caltrain is a system that uses a historic, existing right-of-way dating all the way back to the 1860s to its benefit, and it's an extremely lucky commuter rail system. The geography of the narrow SF Peninsula makes it so that all the cities on it are lined up pretty straight, and a one-line commuter rail system is optimal and perfect to serve the 12 cities on the peninsula with ease. Commonly, these cities on the peninsula have a central business district that runs perpendicular to the trackage. Basically, these cities in the peninsula developed in an era dominated by rail travel and were born to host a number of TODs. Caltrain is a commuter rail system that is the model for how you get it done, and as far as we can tell, they keep upgrading their system for the better. Caltrain, I gotta admit, you're my favorite Bay Area transit system. I also have a pretty special announcement. I'm starting a Patreon. I'd really appreciate any support you give me, and currently I'm blown away by everyone clicking and commenting cool stuff on my videos. It means a lot. Check it out in the description or in my banner, and I'd love to talk about transit with you, and I want to host a cool live stream for my patrons. Again, thank you so much if you made it this far, and I'll see you next time.